The beginning of the chapter is the philosophical delineation of the view. A fairly long section, complicated in one way, and not so complicated in another way. So that's the first movement, like a piece of music. The second movement is who trying to carefully use I'm trying to carefully use his terminology. What comes to mind is who realizes the view, and trying to think of his word. Who puts together the view, but anyway, who realizes the view? And in the second movement, he talks about the initial Buddha, the original Buddha, Samantabhadra. In Samantabhadra's, at least using my word, we'll see if he uses the word, realizes the view. Now, Samantabhadra has no mistake. Unlike those in the third movement who have mistake, and they have to get rid of mistake in order to realize the view. So everybody else has to get rid of mistake to realize the view. And so in the third movement, he talks about everyone else who becomes Buddhafied, who becomes enlightened. But the word is Buddhafication. So these are the three movements. And last time I was trying to figure out what the movements are. And it's very clear that the first movement is delineation of the view, the philosophic presentation of the view. Then the question is, he doesn't pose the question, but who realizes the view? So we have Samantabhadra, the original Buddha, the initial Buddha. And I'll add to that, way back in time, much like the way many view the Lotus Sutra, and I used the example of the group who invited me to Japan. And I'll add, somewhat blew my mind to introduce me to the idea that there was a first Buddha, whereas in Geluk there always were Buddhas. There's no beginning to Buddhas, and there in Geluk there is no Buddha who wasn't first a sentient being, who had obstructions to overcome. But we see very clearly in the second movement that there is a Buddha, Samantabhadra, who never had obstructions to overcome, who never had mistake. And became a Buddha. in my reading, I'm so happy to have figured out the three movements in these three parts of the chapter. I didn't go on to read the rest of the chapter or even to find out do these three movements cover the whole chapter. So you can see, despite the fact that I'm the person who translated the chapter, I'm still finding out about the basic movements of the chapter. As the great scholar Geshe Lundrup Soba said, when I asked him about his own education, he said the equivalent in Tibetan, I really became educated when I started teaching. And I was shocked. You spent all those years debating, and now you're telling me that you really became educated when you started teaching. And I have to say, yes. Because when you present what you think you knew something about to somebody else, more even basic questions arise like, at what point is he talking about original, shall we say, enlightenment or original Buddhafication? And it's only at that point where Samantabhadra comes up. Prior to that, he's talking about the philosophic view, and that's completely obvious. Yeah, I'll drink to that. Yeah. So, now, there are some questions about the answer that's given here in the beginning of this chapter, which have to do with the construction of Tibetan sentences. In any case, the question is clear. It's like, hey, what you're saying makes it look as if that in terms of what you're saying about the basis, we have this sphere or expanse of reality, and the qualities, the attributes of Buddhahood and the Buddha bodies, the three Buddha bodies, are only suitable to appear. And the answer is going to be that all of the attributes of Buddhahood are present in the basis. So, Mipam Gyatsho has a brilliant presentation, and the sentences in this complicated answer the point where Samantabhadra appears are at points seemingly difficult to untangle, but I strongly recommend reading them over and over, and we will attempt to untangle them. Now, for instance, let's start, he himself uses this example, but let's use this example, which he brought up earlier also, let's look at it from the point of view of Gelu. In meditative equipoise, directly realizing emptiness, by a bodhisattva, but not by a Buddha. All that the bodhisattva perceives is emptiness. An absence of inherent existence. Now, what happened to, and it's said that when you directly perceive emptiness, you're perceiving the emptinesses of all phenomena in all multiverses, all universes. Even though you're not perceiving those phenomena. And all of those emptinesses are just absences of inherent existence. But you don't have any sense of this absence of inherent existence and that absence of inherent existence and this absence of inherent existence, and this one over here and that one over there, If, as enlightend, right? This guy. Kept saying, the wisdom consciousness, the wisdom directly realizing emptiness, and the emptiness that's being realized are like water and water. Totally, for the person experiencing it, are not distinguishable. You just, that means it's just there, those two are just like water. So of course those many emptinesses are just water too. So that metaphor conveys it. So just so in Nyingma, emptiness, really saying the same thing, aren't they? Emptiness is luminous. Emptiness itself is luminous. Okay, back to Gelu. As a Buddha perceives all phenomena. Well, let's put it this way. Let's limit it to what a Buddha sees from that Buddha's own viewpoint. A Buddha perceives endless purity, only pure phenomena from a Buddha's own point of view. So that means that pure phenomena and emptiness are totally compatible. You with me? It's just our obstructions, the Bodhisattva's obstructions, that make it impossible for the Bodhisattva to see from the Bodhisattva's own viewpoint, to perceive emptiness and pure phenomena at the same time. In Gelu. If we consider this situation from the Buddha's own point of view. So similarly, so you see, I'm going back and adding something I feel I should have said. I shouldn't make comments about what I'm doing. So there's a tremendous compatibility in Gelug between emptiness and pure phenomena. So in Nyingma, those pure phenomena are in emptiness. Now, that's called emptiness endowed with all supreme aspects. Now, frankly, I think that term, my mind is trying to go through and pick out that phrase also in Gelug. But frankly, I'll say that phrase is also used in Gelug. It may have to be explained in Gelug differently, but you see in Nyingma, all supreme aspects. You see all pure phenomena. So in Gelug does not say that a Buddha perceives all cruddy phenomena like my wonderful coffee. It's a cruddy phenomenon. It's a cruddy. I don't mean my coffee is cruddy today and really supreme some other days. It's not ambrosia. If it were ambrosia, then it would be included among the wonderful things that a Buddha, pure things, that a Buddha would see from a Buddha's own point of view. But a Buddha just plain wouldn't see it from a Buddha's own point of view. From a Buddha's own point of view, the Buddha just plain wouldn't see it. If the Buddha was standing here, Buddha wouldn't see it from a Buddha's own point of view. In Gelug, so as the Dalai Lama said to me, sitting across, in his desk, so then that Buddha's consciousness would not be a valid cognition. This is helping me, so I won't make so many mistakes. They advise you, if you're going to take a test, have a cup of coffee beforehand. So that means it's helping me not make so many mistakes. So my talk won't be so jagged. So in Gelug it said the only reason why a Buddha sees such things is because we see them, and then it doesn't say anything else about the topic. The conversation, the discourse suddenly stops. So what Nyingma says and what Mipam Gyatsho is going to say with a whole lot of sentences that are going to be difficult to follow is that these are packed into the basis. And it really looks like that, because a Buddha can see these these pure, this endlessly pure phenomena in emptiness. Doesn't see the junky stuff, right? Endlessly junky stuff in emptiness. That's going to tease you. You put a lot of emphasis into putting up all these buildings. If a Buddha arrived, a Buddha wouldn't see any of them. That's really nice. Kind of puts us all in place. You know, even my condo is being fixed right now. Buddha arrives, it won't see all the things that are fixed up.
So Jeffrey's saying that the Buddha does not perceive conventional ultimate reality. Is junky stuff conventional reality?
Well, is the word reality a proper term?
Conventionalities.
Yeah, veilings.
Veilings.
Yeah.
So, does it?
Yes. The answer is even from a Buddha's own point of view, no. The cruddy veilings, no. The pure veilings, yes. From a Buddha's own point of view. But in Gelug, a Buddha does see the cruddy ones by way of their appearing to us. And then, as I said, the discourse stops. Now, I'm not sure about my translation of the answer. The first clause looks fine. Such is asserted, meaning that they're just suitable to appear from the viewpoint of the factor of the basis in isolation. You know, if you just talked about basis, you know, conceptually isolated out basis, path, and fruit. He doesn't say much about that. But having read now a number of times this first movement, first segment, I think it might be better to say, you see, it's not all the text says is, but since in terms of the mode of appearance. Well, what is in terms of the mode of appearance? And I'm wavering on what he's talking about. What's in terms of the mode of appearance? I think it could refer back to the previous clause. And this morning I wanted to say, but since that is in terms of the mode of appearance, there is nothing unsuitable. I don't feel comfortable, and Khetsun Sangpo didn't say enough to clarify this. But there's nothing unsuitable about what? And you see, there's nothing unsuitable about saying that they're just suitable to dawn in terms of conceptual isolation, or about the point that I'm eventually going to make, which is that the pristine wisdom of the diversity and the vast attributes of a Buddha's bodies and so forth existing right in the basis. I'm tending toward thinking that he's still that the material that's in the brackets should not go forward into the point he's going to make, that everything does exist in the basis, but should refer backward to saying that if you're going to conceptually isolate the basis, then it's fine to say that these things are just suitable to dawn. I don't know. That's what I don't know here. I don't know which it is. And what's in brackets is my speculation, actually, which I don't do in this book. But I thought I was when I put that in, I was encapsulating what Khetsun Sangpo was saying. Sorry about that. And I don't think we're going to be able to settle it. But maybe. But anyway, it's clear that the point that's going to be made in this is that, in fact, everything does exist in the basis. And if you want to separate it out conceptually and talk about it that way, in terms of the mode of appearance, then okay, then you can say, yeah, these are just suitable to dawn, but that's not the point of that the huge point I'm going to make about the basis. Everything exists in the basis. All of the Buddha qualities exist in the basis. Now, a very helpful way to, I think, to read this section is to read it in two different ways, these quotes, is to read the quotes that that Mipam Gyatsho makes alone, without Khetsun Sangpo's very interesting commentary. Because the very interesting commentary should be read alone, because it's packed full of interesting stuff. But Mipam Gyatsho's point is that there are passages in Nyingma that make it look as if the basis is that the basis does not contain the Buddha attributes. Does not. There are quotes. And he's saying, but I'm going to show you how not to take them that way. That's not the perspective. And you see, he says, in that way you should understand the meaning of the statements in the Tantras of the Great Completeness. That's why I think that what I put in the brackets is wrong. When he says there's nothing unsuitable, and it should say about doing such an isolation, about doing such a conceptual isolation. But you've got to understand you're doing such a conceptual isolation. from the viewpoint, or in terms of, just what he said above, in terms of the mode of appearance. And then I would delete the rest of what's in the brackets.
Redo that again, read how you would like it.
There is nothing unsuitable, bracket, about doing such a conceptual isolation in terms of the mode of appearance. Now let's see if what I'm saying makes sense. And just read the quotes that do have, a lot of interesting stuff. And see, and my point is, let's see if the quotes are talking about a basis that doesn't have the richness of the three Buddha bodies, despite having a lot of rich stuff going on in those quotes. So it says, prior to I. Now that itself is interesting, but there's no I. The basis abided this way, called the great essentially pure basis. So it's just talking about, so I'll hammer my point. The great essentially pure basis. It abides in the three aspects of entity, nature, compassion. The entity is the immutably pure wisdom of unimpeded luminosity. Of course, it's going to be empty and luminous, called the mode of abiding of the youthful encased body. So the youthful encased body, well, let's not get into what Khetsun Sangpo says. The nature is unimpeded illumination of the five lights. And I don't think we can bring over what we know about five lights from other contexts into Nyingma. And I want to look up some stuff I have from David Germano on, it's not the five, is it five lamps? Not on five lamps, but on, see if I can find five lights. The appearance of compassion is like, for example, a cloudless sky. Just sky. Compassion is sky, just sky. Okay. There are no enumerations, such as 1 and 2. You see? Absence of enumerations. Not established as existent or non-existent by analysis. Aside from a noumenon, just a noumenon, not differentiated into anything. It is not established even as only pristine wisdom. You see, this feeds into the original question. Not even pristine wisdom. Wordless, inexpressible, not dwelling in extremes. It is self-knowledge, okay? We've got, well, we didn't have pristine wisdom up there above. Now we do have self-knowledge. Extinction of the extremes of expression, apprehension, and name, without causes and without enumeration of conditions, without the dualistic appearance of object and subject, not differentiated even into any character. Extinction of coarse subjects. Oh, that's that's very ill. But you see, that's very Guhya Samaja, too. Coarse subjects. So, we come out of that, and he says, you might think, thus, hey, all these great Nyingma Tantras said, since it is not suitable to assert that Buddha qualities, is the word qualities? Yes, qualities. Sometimes it's attributes, sometimes it's qualities. Since it is not suitable to assert the Buddha qualities are spontaneously complete from within the basis, it is not reasonable to assert that whatever is pervaded by that basis has the nature of the primordially Buddhafied fruit. Rather, the basis is asserted as only a Buddha of natural purity. So there are the two purities, natural purity and purity of adventitious obstructions. So this would be just, as in Gelug, even we have natural purity, but is not Buddhafied as an entity of the final fruit endowed with the two purities. Maybe we should stop here and go back up and look at that answer. Such is asserted, this just being suitable to that the pristine wisdom, the last part of the question, the pristine wisdom of the diversity and the vast attributes of a Buddha's body and so forth are only factors in the sphere of reality that are suitable to dawn. Okay. And the answer is, and he's giving his own opinion, such is asserted, okay, blah, 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 in the basis in isolation, in terms of the mode of appearance. So then he says there is nothing unsuitable about, maybe instead of saying doing such, asserting such. How's that? Asserting such from conceptual isolation in terms of the mode of appearance. That's not bad. So you have, reading Tibetan, you got to figure out what's left out. There's a rule of, we don't want to do stupid redundancy, but in English you got to do the stupid what in Tibetan would be called stupid redundancy, saying it too much. In that way, you should understand the meaning of the statements in the Tantras of the Great Completeness that seem to say that seem to say just what the questioner has put forward, that seem to say it. But I'm going to show you, okay. It's as if I'm trying to make my point by shouting. You know how people raise their voice when they want you to hear their point. Like they're going to make you afraid. Because if you don't accept their point, they're going to shout louder. And then, if you don't accept their shouting, they're going to beat you. Especially if they're big. Oh my gosh. So you might think, yes, so it's worded all the clearer. You might think that. And then we get to the answer. So here's where his exposition. I was going to put my watch down here so I didn't have to. I have the clock is on this screen. 9:55. Where the movement we've now built up. He's built up to the crescendo of the philosophic view. And it's like he's building up to why I'm going to show you the view. Otherwise you'd be totally lost. You couldn't figure out the Nyingma view. But I've given you the key already. So we can just pass over these very complicated sentences. But this is the, to get through these complicated sentences, are the layout of, and if you and I could remember these complicated sentences, we'd know the ins and outs of the Nyingma view. Really. I wish I could remember them. In terms of such a primeval basis, non-fluctuated. Is that better or unfluctuated? By karmic, I added, did I? Or Khetsun Sangpo? He must have. I don't add things, but I did above. I was adding from what I had gleaned from him, but not probably exactly at that place, but I'll check. But even if I had, it's my function as editor, if he's off key, to not add it. In terms of such a primeval basis, what is that in contradiction or contradistinction to? Not in terms of appearance. Up above he said in terms of appearance. Non-fluctuated by karmic winds. So, and remember I said that Khetsun Sangpo says there are two types of stirrings, fluctuation of the basis. So-called of the basis, it's actually of the effervescence, that actually karma can't touch it, but there's some other type of wind which I don't know anything about. But I'm not saying, I'm saying maybe that's the one that's working here. But how that gets going, or who knows? Maybe that's why you need a creator God. It is not asserted. Now, one really horrible thing here is that basal sentient beings doesn't refer to sentient beings in the basis. Basal here just means ordinary. And it would be nice to come up with a different word, but it is the same word. Now, to avoid confusion, maybe it is that every time basal sentient beings come up, I should just put in that is ordinary. And as I've said before, in terms of a yogi taking this story, myth, account to mind, like when I'm waking up, this idea of the basis that is that some fluctuation starts working on, and I'm wondering what that basis is like. And it puts in my mind that something's, what it's like without being stirred. And that my various afflictive emotions and so forth are stirring and making it into a horror of mistake. With that note, see you around.